Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Before we dive into tonight's story, please remember to subscribe if you enjoy these tales. It really helps me keep bringing you these experiences that most people never hear about. Tonight's story comes from a nurse in Seoul who we'll call Min-jung. Something happened during her oncology ward rotation that changed how she thinks about names, duty, and the thin boundaries we maintain in hospitals. Let's begin. My name is Park Min-jung, and until 6 months ago, I was one of the most reliable night nurses at Severance Hospital's oncology ward. The kind who never called in sick, who covered shifts without complaint, who remembered which patients liked their blankets from the warmer and which ones needed their IV alarms set quieter. I was the one my colleagues trusted to handle the difficult cases, the one families thanked for staying late to explain procedures, the one who believed that duty meant something sacred in a place where people came to fight for more time. I don't work nights anymore, and when people ask why, I tell them I needed better hours for my health. But that's not the truth. The truth starts with 2 plastic wristbands in my pocket on a February night, when the ward was fuller than it should have been, and I was more tired than I'd ever been. The elevator doors had just closed with that particular sound they make after midnight. Not quite a whisper, more like lips pressing together to keep a secret. When I heard it, a single electronic beep from the nurse's station. Not an IV alarm or a call button, but the pure tone of a wristband scanner activating. I reached into my scrub pocket automatically, feeling for my handheld scanner, and my fingers found something else. 2 patient wristbands, their plastic still warm from skin, when there should have been only one. The scanner beeped again from the empty station, though no one stood there to activate it, and I knew then that I'd already crossed a line I couldn't see in my exhaustion. The oncology ward at night has its own ecosystem of sounds and sensations that day shift nurses never fully understand. There's the sharp sting of hand sanitizer every few minutes because we touch so many things that could carry infection to immunocompromised patients, the dispenser's squeak becoming as automatic as breathing. The IV pumps create a constellation of soft alarms, never urgent enough to panic, never quiet enough to ignore, and we develop a sixth sense for which patient's machine is calling before we even look up from our charts. The whiteboard behind the nurse's station maps our world in bed numbers and colored dots. Green for stable, yellow for observation, red for critical, black dots that appear and disappear with a peculiar finality. When you open the blanket warmer, it exhales like something alive, releasing that particular hospital warmth that smells faintly of industrial laundry and something indefinably medical. The service elevator at the end of the hall runs on a different schedule after midnight, its bell softer, its LED floor indicators sometimes flickering between numbers as if uncertain where it's going. These are the textures of night shift, the sensory markers that tell us we're still awake, still responsible, still keeping watch over people whose bodies are fighting battles we can only support from the outside. My rule that night was the same as always. Keep everyone breathing until dawn, handle the crisis in front of me, fix everything else when the sun comes up. That included the surgery queue I'd just altered with those 2 wristbands in my pocket. The first sign that something was wrong came during my 0:30 medication pass. I scanned Mrs. Kim's wristband, the real Mrs. Kim, the one whose name matched her face, and the handheld scanner beeped once, clear and normal. I set the device on her bedside table to prepare her morphine pump adjustment, and it beeped again. Not an error tone, not a low battery warning, but the exact same scan confirmation, as if someone had picked it up and scanned the band again from just behind my shoulder. When I turned, the room held only Mrs. Kim's labored breathing and the green glow of her oxygen flow meter. I picked up the scanner, checked the screen, and found the name displayed wasn't Mrs. Kim at all. It was Lee Sung-min, the name from the other wristband in my pocket, the one I'd switched 2 hours ago to move my friend's mother up the surgery queue. The monitor above Mrs. Kim's bed flickered, and for just a moment the header that should have shown her name displayed Lee Sung-min instead, the letters updating before I'd even touched the keyboard. I blinked hard, fatigue making my eyes water, and when I looked again, everything read correctly. The scanner was silent in my hand, its screen dark, as if it had never beeped that second time at all. During wound checks, the pattern had evolved beyond dismissible glitches. I was 3 rooms down from the nurse's station when I heard it. The scanner beep, singular and clear, coming from the far end of the ward where no nurse was stationed. The sound carried perfectly in the quiet corridor, that electronic tone we heard hundreds of times each shift, except this one had no hand behind it. I walked toward the sound, my full wrist socks gripping the linoleum with each step, and found the wall-mounted scanner at bed 18 glowing faintly, its screen showing a successful scan of Lee Sung-min, timestamped 2 seconds ago. Bed 18 had been empty since yesterday. The curtain rings ticked softly in the air conditioning current, and I noticed the bed's brake was engaged, as if someone had just positioned it for a patient transfer. That's when the porter appeared at my elbow. I hadn't heard him approach, pushing an empty wheelchair. "Is this for the surgery transfer?" he asked, checking his tablet. "Says here Lee Sung-min. Priority move to OR 3. My chest tightened. The surgery wasn't scheduled until tomorrow afternoon, and the porter's tablet shouldn't have shown any transfer orders for a patient who was technically still in bed 12 under a different name. I started to explain, to correct the error, but then Dr. Choi appeared from the medication room, her senior presence filling the corridor with authority. "Min-jung, stop making everything complicated," she said, barely looking up from her own tablet. "The system shows what it shows. If the band says Lee Sung-min needs to move, we move the patient with that band. We don't have time for administrative puzzles at 2 in the morning." I nodded, like the coward I was, like the exhausted nurse who'd already compromised once tonight and couldn't find the energy to fight the increasing wrongness of it all. The porter waited with his wheelchair while I felt the 2 wristbands in my pocket grow heavier. During the 3:30 oxygen rounds, I tried to fix what I'd done. In the supply room, under the harsh fluorescent light that made everything look like an interrogation, I pulled out both wristbands. The plastic felt wrong immediately, too warm, as if they were still wrapped around wrists, though I'd removed them hours ago. When I tried to cut the first band with trauma shears, the plastic resisted like something alive, the blades sliding off without leaving a mark. The bands had somehow sealed themselves, the adjustable clips fused shut as if they'd been melted and reformed. Worse, when I returned to check on the patients, they responded to the wrong names. Mrs. Kim answered when I called for Lee Sung-min, her eyes focusing with a clarity she hadn't shown in days. The actual Lee Sung-min's mother, lying in bed 12 with Mrs. Kim's band on her wrist, turned her head when I said Mrs. Kim and asked about her upcoming surgery in a voice that wasn't quite her own. The elevator at the end of the hall dinged and opened, though no one had pressed the call button. And when I whispered Lee Sung-min to myself, trying to think through the problem, the doors slid wider as if accepting a passenger. The scanner beep came again, but doubled now, 2 tones slightly out of tune with each other, like two devices scanning simultaneously from different sides of the same door. The sound seemed to come from the elevator shaft itself, rising and falling with the car's movement, and I realized with cold certainty that something was using the hospital systems to track the name I'd misassigned, following it through every electronic checkpoint like blood through digital veins. At 4:45 during the service elevator maintenance window, when the main lifts go offline and only the service car runs, I encountered what had been hunting through our systems all night. The service corridor was empty, lit only by emergency strips and the glow from various monitors and status displays. I'd gone there to think, to find somewhere the scanner beeps couldn't follow, but I was wrong. In that liminal space where the hospital shows its mechanical bones, I saw it first where names were written. The figure appeared in the gap between monitor headers, a tall shadow that existed only in the space where patient names displayed. It stood outlined in the white glow of an empty patient label strip on the medication cart. Its form suggested rather than shown, like looking at the absence of light rather than darkness itself. When the label printer suddenly activated, casting its brief operational light, the figure turned toward me with a movement that felt older than the hospital, older than modern medicine, as old as the first time someone wrote a name for death to read. The scanner beeped by itself on my belt, and the service elevator dinged its arrival, though I hadn't called it. The doors opened to reveal a transport bed, its rails gleaming under the emergency lighting, and on the single occupied wrist lay the band bearing Lee Sung-min's name, though the face above it was Mrs. Kim's. I tried to speak, to claim the mistake as mine, to offer my own name as correction, but the figure, what I knew even then, was Jeoseung Saja, the one who comes for the dying, who follows what is written rather than what is true, simply waited beside the bed. It didn't touch anything, didn't need to. The elevator doors closed on my explanation and reopened to show the bed already inside, already descending, though I hadn't seen it move. The scanner in my hand showed a successful discharge, final and irreversible, and I understood that the Saja doesn't make mistakes. It simply follows the names we write, and we had written wrong. The weight of duty I'd carried for years collapsed into my chest like a building falling inward, and I stood in that service corridor until dawn, listening to the elevator return again and again, each time carrying nothing but the echo of that final scanner beep. Dawn came thin and grey through the ward windows, the kind of light that makes everything look like it's been drained of colour and meaning. The handover happened with the usual efficiency. Night shift condensing 12 hours into 12 minutes. Day shift nodding and taking notes. Everyone pretending the exhaustion isn't written in the shadows under our eyes. Bed 18 was empty, as it had been all night according to the official record. Bed 12 held Lee Sung-min's mother, sleeping peacefully with the correct wristband on her arm, her surgery slot mysteriously cleared for that afternoon. Mrs. Kim's bed was vacant, the sheets already stripped and sent to laundry, her chart showing a transfer to palliative care that no one remembered processing. I stood at the nurse's station with clean gloves that wouldn't stop shaking and reprinted a wristband with Mrs. Kim's name, placing it on the counter like an offering to something that had already taken what it came for. The scanner beeped once from the elevator shaft, not the harsh electronic tone we'd heard all night, but softer, accepting, final. The day shift nurses didn't seem to hear it, busy with their morning routines, but I knew that sound would follow me home, would echo in every elevator I entered, would beep from every scanner I passed. Even now, months later, Working day shifts in a different ward, I sometimes hear it. A single scanner tone from a dark charging dock that no one else claims. A reminder that the hospital's systems remember every name we've touched, every band we've moved, every small betrayal we've made in the name of exhaustion and favoritism. That's where the story ends, though the weight of it continues. Hospitals run on two currencies that seem simple but aren't: names and trust. Every patient band is a promise that will treat the person wearing it, not the name written on it. But sometimes we forget that distinction when we're tired, when we're pressured, when someone we care about needs help, and the system seems too slow, too rigid, too uncaring. We make small compromises, thinking we're bending rules that are arbitrary, administrative, meaningless in the face of real suffering. But those bands, those names, those systems, they're the architecture of accountability. And when we alter them, we invite things that follow older rules than hospital protocol. Every shortcut is a prayer that the systems will forgive us, that the universe won't notice one small lie in service of a greater good. But some debts don't take money or apologies. They take exactly what was written, exactly what we assigned, exactly what we thought we could control. The Jeoseung Saja. Whether you believe it's real, or just the pattern our guilty minds create from coincidence and system errors, doesn't judge the morality of our intentions. It simply follows the names we write, and once written, some things can't be unwritten. If you work in healthcare, if you hold someone's name in your hands in any capacity, remember this: hold it clean. The weight of a name is heavier than the plastic band that bears it, and the responsibility of getting it right isn't just about paperwork or protocol. It's about recognizing that in our exhaustion, in our desire to help, in our very human need to save the people we love, we might invite something that follows different rules entirely. Some mistakes echo in elevator shafts forever, beeping from empty scanners, calling names that no longer match their faces. Thank you for listening tonight. If you've had your own experience with things that shouldn't happen on the night shift, you know where to find me. Until next time, keep the lights on, check the names twice, and remember, the hospital never really sleeps.